Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Wednesday. This is Reese for Monitor Duty signing in. I am today joined by Stalwart Mike Hutchison, who just got here. I am today joined and then left and then got back. And our special guest today, Scott McCullar of various and sundry fame. So we'll go ahead and talk about all that. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Can I start just by saying how awesome Scott is? Because he's the guy who helped me to do my own self-done comic books like 20 years ago. So, yeah, I owe this guy a lot. So, but that's not the only reason I like this comic.
Appreciate the kind words. No, I enjoyed back in the day the fanzine and we did some stuff with the old Shooting Star Comics group. Wow, 20. That was a while back, wasn't it? Now,
yeah.
Amazing how much time has passed.
Various and sundry.
Brian Maxwell says various and sundry. Wow. And we got one of our regular viewers, Isaac Larkin, has appeared. He's got the Beatles in the back.
Yeah,
very nice.
Yeah. The 1967 Richard Avedon lithographs. Yeah. So. And this is my wife, Jennifer McCullar, who's peeking in and saying hello.
Yeah, hello.
So.
Well, hello, Jen. Thanks for giving us the good grace.
Yeah, she keeps me in line. Yeah.
And we all need some of that, I tell you. That's for sure. So tonight, before we get on too far, Scott, I want you to tell us what is Sea Shanty's
tongue twister.
No. Sea Shanty Funnies.
Sea Shanty Funnies is my getting to fulfill a dream that goes back to third grade when I wanted to become a comic book writer. Honestly, between Popeye and Green Arrow, those are the two things I wanted to do the most. And I wanted one day to write and draw Popeye comics because I love the character. And I think about back in 2024, I realized that, Popeye's entering the public domain in 2025 on January 1st. And that kind of lit a fire under me to say, you can fulfill that dream of writing and drawing Popeye. And so with him going into the public domain, I've got puppies that are squeaking toys. So I decided to write and illustrate my own Popeye comic that pays homage respectfully. I'm doing my best to keep it all ages, and but I'm getting to do my take. I'm getting to play with the toys in the sandbox, and I'm kind of taking from what was done decades and decades ago in the newspaper comic strips and the cartoons and all the other stuff. It's been over 90 years, and doing my take. I'm inspired by the classic work of the original creator E.C. Segar, and of course people that followed him. I grew up on the Bud Sackendorf material in the 70s and 80s. I am a big fan of I know there's detractors or critics, but I fell in love with the Popeye film with Robin Williams back in the day, and in recent years I kind of discovered the work of art of Bella Zaboli, who after Segar died and before Sackendorf really took over the newspaper strip, he was doing comics. He was already doing kind of comics and stuff, and he was Segar's assistant. But I fell in love with the 20 some odd years that Zaboli did the work too with Sims, and I just forgot the other writer's name. So that's kind of still relatively new to me for these last 5 years, discovering what I consider the lost era of Popeye. But so I'm kind of taking all that and the Fleischer cartoons and the famous studio cartoons, and I'm kind of meshing it all together. And I'm doing my own. Consider this like an alternate timeline that kind of starts from the past, kind of meshes it all together. But I'm kind of continuing on. I'm kind of letting them age about 5 years from what the classic period of how they're always kind of stated, for the most part, that's that age, just to let Sweepy. This is for me, just to kind of give it a different spin, just to let Sweepy get a little bit older, and I think I've introduced Olive, who's got a gray hair, and just little things like that. But I'm kind of trying to continue that storyline, and I'm trying to do it respectfully, that kind of honors the past, but and I'm trying to do it in a retro past. So I'm not doing the internet or flip cell phones or 21st century stuff, but I'm trying to kind of keep it timeless somewhere in the mid 20th century.
So Olive Oil isn't an influencer.
No, she is. She just influences Popeye with her yeah.
Well, and Sweet Pea.
Yeah. But
and probably the nephews.
Yes, yeah. I'm a big fan of the nephews. Yes.
Now I got a question. How, since you obviously are going with the public domain characters, and Olive Oil precedes Popeye falling into the public domain. Mm-hmm. So, are you like waiting for Pappy and others to become public domain?
Yes and no. I was trying to, but I have come to learn in my research that there's a lot of material that slipped through copyright renewals, and there are documented sites that list a lot of the things, especially going up to 1956, that certain cartoons or certain comic books or things that kind of carry these characters. There's even some cartoons that were not renewed, and so they're fair game. I will say there's carefully there's a little bit of a gray area. So this is also a parody comic strip that I'm doing too, and there's some fair use in parody, but I am trying to my best to stick with just using public domain based material. But there especially like when I really first started with Wimpy, for example, I was keeping him in his green for the longest time because
I love the visual aid. It's wonderful.
The Sailorman meets Sinbad the Sailor, which is in the public domain. This is what Wimpy was dressed like. But as I've come to learn since then, there are comic strips and things and other cartoons with Wimpy and others that they're from what I can see from some of the legal experts, they're fair game. So I've been cautiously dipping my toes in and getting a little bit more bold to use things.
Well, that's one of the things that's really interesting too, and it's one of the things that's been a bugbear for me for many years, is how like King, like they have this huge hoard of comics and they don't let anyone look at them, but they also didn't renew copyright on them.
Yeah,
so, for like loads of it.
I mean, you could go on to websites like Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and there are third parties that are reprinting material that you can find that it's right out there to buy and to purchase.
Because I'll be honest, like one of my things that I've always wanted to read through, and you can't affordably get to it, was Terry and the Pirates.
Yeah,
and I've never understood why that wasn't just like, like you can go to any Walmart, any Barnes and Noble, and like Lord of the Rings, never not in print, right?
Yeah.
A Watchmen, never not in print. Why is Terry and the Pirates not with the same kind of station where they're just like people? I mean, I don't understand it. It's such iconic, classic American adventure comics that like the market wouldn't necessarily be enormous, but part of why the market's not bigger is that no one can get their hands on it. I just don't get why King is just like, well, we wouldn't want the rabble to find out about the pirates.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I was excited about a decade or so ago. I think the publisher is called Checker. They were able to publish the Milton Caniff Steve Canyon stuff material, and I fell in love with that. Some of those reprints of the pilot Steve Canyon. So, but yeah, I admit I've never read Terry and the Pirates. That's one of the things but I've read a lot of the Steve Canyon material.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I was first exposed to Terry the Pirates when I moved to Denver, in the '90s, the late '90s. My family moved down there, and it was reprints were just in the regular Sunday Denver Post,
Okay.
and that's where I first read it. And I was just like, "This is great. Where's the rest of it?" And I went looking, and it's just like impossible to get your hands on. It's
Yeah. So
crazy.
Steve Canyon spun out of Terry and the Pirates. It became one comic became the other. Is that what happened with it, or
I think I'm not 100% sure. Maybe there's a better historian that might comment, but my understanding was kind of left his publisher that he was dealing with Terry and the Pirates, and then he needed something new. I think he spun off, or just I don't know if it's a spinoff.
Oh, okay.
He just it's like, okay, I don't. I know
it's what he followed it with. Okay.
So I'm going to do Steve Canyon. That went into the the Korean War post era and all that, and the Vietnam era.
Okay.
Great. Oh, I love the inkwork, the artwork. I'm a big fan. As a matter of fact, I know you can't really see it how it's all set up. You can't see it, but I've got a big drawing tablet, a Wacom. I don't forget what the brand, which one it is, but I draw with my pen, my digital pen, and one of the brushes, my main one is a Milton Caniff brush, digital, that I use to do my drawings with. Just a little inside baseball there.
Well, the only Canyon comic that I even remember reading is one from has to be 1982, just because of where I was when I read it. He's dreaming that he's in World War One, and he's flying a plane, and the Red Baron comes after him, and he is caught dead to rights, and a Sopwith camel comes in and blows it away, and he waves, and a little paw comes out of the out of the pilot's and waves at him. It's clearly Snoopy's paw. It's just I don't know why it was a crossover before they were doing crossovers like that.
That's amazing. Great. So Scott, from the chat, we see Isaac Larkin says, "Did you do an update where he eats kale and avocados to give Popeye a power up?"
No, I haven't got there. No. I'll keep it in mind. Yeah, I'll put it. Yep. I've got a file folder for ideas to use that.
We are joined by the man himself, Cartoonicus. Thanks for making it.
Hi there, Cartoonicus.
So we have been talking mostly about generalities with the strip, but I want to get down to talk to a little bit of the details.
Okay.
So I know I have read up to date. Rutch, did you get a chance to go back and reread the Sea Shanty Funnies?
I basically see whichever ones come up on Facebook from time to time. I didn't go back and reread from the beginning, but I have seen here and there. I really love the Superman one. That was just ingenious, using one of the public domain Superman cartoons to bring Superman in years before he will be really in the public domain. That was a cool idea. And I had no idea that Robin Williams and Christopher Reeve were roommates.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a great.
That was actually really finding that out was ridiculously interesting.
Now we have another Popeye historian that's in the chat here, Ryan Maxwell, and he is an expert on the Popeye film with Robin Williams, and he informed me of some of the stuff that if I'm Ryan, you please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but actually Christopher Reeve really suggested to Robin Williams, hey, you might want to do this, Popeye, like I just did this Superman, might help the career and things, and but just knowing those two guys are best of friends, and even in after Christopher Reeve had his tragic accident that paralyzed him, Robin Williams was there for him, and I just it warms my heart to think that those two were lifelong friends there. Uh-oh. I don't hear you, Matthew.
It's happening again.
Well, drat.
Oh, there you are. Now I hear you.
Oh yeah, I had muted myself to blow my nose. I forgot about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, what I was just saying is I think it's really interesting, especially because of the Popeye and Superman connection. Also, I didn't know that they were roommates. That was actually really interesting to find out. But it's also really interesting. I'd love to spend some time talking about the movie at some point because I think it's really weird. I think it's really weird that people don't like that movie. But I don't want to get off topic of talking about the comic. Cartoonicus, I know you got a chance to read some of Sea Shanty Funnies. How much did you get through?
Yeah, I started at the beginning and got up through the first, if it is in fact the first, of the Christmas strips.
Okay.
So quite a few.
Yeah.
Through the first major story arc. Saw. Yeah, got our villains established, and managed to watch Popeye for the first time ever interact with Blondie and Dagwood.
Yeah, and that's great. So what are your overall as a first-time reader, Cartoonicus, and also you are a long-term if you're a really, that's interesting, Ryan. I'll have to think about that in a second. But as a first-time reader, I know you're a long-term comic strip fan. But what are your impressions of Sea Shanty Funnies? What are you thinking?
It's there's a very interesting element going on here, and that is many of these are very funny. I am going to have to be honest with you. There are a lot of jokes that I do not get. However, they are completely in line with so many comic strips of that time being the same way. So really kudos for managing to hold on to and really bring back what I would otherwise refer to as a lost mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You must have an understanding of Popeye that none of us can fathom.
Well, I have met a few other Uber fans that are no more than me. But I appreciate the kind words. Popeye is near and dear to my heart, and has been since literally before even I entered kindergarten. I've got talking about props to use. I got this book in 1979 when I was 8 years old. This is the actual book, and I read this book back and forth, and it was like and there were characters in here and things like I had no idea who they were. I didn't think I'd ever get to read them. And it's just now in the last decade that I'm able to kind of trace back and find some of the original material that I missed out on back as a child. And hey, look at there, we're part of a junior.
Like looking in a mirror.
Yeah.
See, now the problem is I'm not in the club and I feel like I hate you both.
Well, I don't know if my wife is watching in the other room, and I'm not trying to embarrass her, but my book fell apart, broke out of the spine, and she got this brand new book binder. And I'm saying this lovingly, but so this is the first time she ever bound a book, reheated the spine and put, for me.
Oh, cool.
Oh wow!
But she accidentally put it upside down.
Oh, no.
And she was like, and I'm saying this lovingly, she was all upset that she and I thought, that it was so appropriate and so funny that I love that my copy is upside down on the inside. So I
feel like this makes it more valuable.
It does. It's like it's been
rebound with love.
It has been rebound with love, and I'll never. Come here, come around. She's going to give me the business, but she did it. She put my book back together for me, but yeah.
I was like, I'll heat it up again and stick it around.
No, I want it like this. So if it ever gets stolen, I can say I can find it because when the police find it. See,
that ruins my plans for the weekend, I guess.
Yeah.
So
But, I appreciate it. Yeah, I am trying to keep that retro feel. I'm not doing. This is no offense if someone wants to do their thing. That's the beauty about the public domain. About the public. Do I have to do the Prime membership to see them?
I was on the way thing so that I could eat ice cream.
Oh, but
well, I'll tell you right now, Isaac. I'm going to interrupt Scott for a moment. I don't have a Prime membership, but I do have a Patreon for Ideal Comics. So if you want to contribute to the ongoing quest for me to make my comics, and buy materials and pay royalties and all that stuff, feel free to be a member. And as we produce new stuff, you guys get to look at it first.
right.
I just have to say this book is really handy for giving you an overview of the Seagar years and especially like the first appearance of Pappy.
Yeah.
When he's just on a little tiny island, all just standing there. There's nothing on this little spit of an island. He's just been there, and then it turns out that he's just got all these mermaid girlfriends who keep him there.
and Pookie Jones there too. I am kind of bragging, but I've been able to backtrack and buy a lot of newspaper clippings, newspaper strips, and I was able to get that actual comic strip with
nice.
of
Hey,
Happy.
If I could interrupt for just a second, just because hopefully a lot of Popeye fans will find this video over the years. If any of you have the Fantagraphics reprints that spell out Popeye on the ends, the one that's called Was a Jeep, that has the letter Y, it's the second to the last volume, it's going for like $600 now. And
really,
if anybody out there has it, I would really love to complete my set.
I'm selling it to you.
Yeah, I know you aren't. That's why it's $600.
I will say this: I did not pay $600 for it.
It was going for $50, and I was hoping that the price would go down, so I didn't buy it at the time.
Because of the scarcity? Is that why?
I don't know. All of a sudden, for some reason, that volume is the one you can't get. You could get the two around it.
To go back to, I was talking about Terry and the Pirates, right?
Yeah.
When I don't think it's Fantagraphics, I think it may have been Kitchen Sink, but whoever it was that was contracted with King to reproduce Terry and the Pirates, they printed 4 volumes, and they underprinted volume 3.
Oh.
It's like $1,200 to get volume 3.
Oh man.
Yeah. And it's like, so once again, I have not read all of Terry. because like, I don't know, it's like I went through, and I'm a huge Addams Family fan, and over the last couple of years I was able to buy. I bought the Addams Family Evolution, which is like all of the Addams comics. But I in deciding if I wanted to buy that one, the Addams Family Addams comics, I should say. But in wanting to buy it, I bought a couple of the Penguin trades, the mass market trades, the tiny ones, back pocket sized. And I was like, I want to see the rest of these. So I ended up buying all of the entire overview, right, of his stuff. But yeah, it was not hard to find all of them. I mean, it was not easy to find all of them. I don't know what it is, but they make it really hard to track all of that down. It's just crazy.
I collected the old DC Archive editions, and I have most of them, but I think there was one volume of Wonder Woman that I think it was maybe, I forget if it was volume 6, but there's like one volume that I could never find or afford to complete that set.
Huh.
So I know, yeah.
The showcase reprints that DC did, those little paperback black and white versions of things, they apparently did do them for Ambush Bug and Captain Carrot, but they did them at, I don't know what happened to them. They weren't like really released, but you can get them, but they cost hundreds of dollars. And why, I don't know, but fortunately I have all the originals for that, so I have no need to get them in black and white. But it's like, why the two things that I probably would have bought? I don't know why. What does this say? Superman versus Popeye and Spinach. Who you betting on?
So, and before we get into that, I do want to go back to what we were talking about with Cartoonicus about reviewing the thing. And one of the things I wanted to hit on is I agree with him. I think that, Scott, you've done a really great job of capturing the spirit of Popeye.
Thank you.
But specifically, what I think you've done really well at is you balance like the easy humor of Cigar, right? With the adventure story. Right? And that's one of the things that in some of the people that came to write Popeye later, their stories don't have or they don't go back to, because one of the things that Thimble Theater did was it would have, you know, big story, small story, big story, small story kind of flow to it. But some of the people that came later, they really bear down on the, you know, life in town, or you know, some of the gags are all about you know, the people around, and they don't have that kind of high adventure aspect that it goes into. And I think one of the things you've done with the first year and a half of Sea Shanty Funnies is that you have several big arcs that you're playing with, and you're pulling out these background characters and the whole business. But I have a question. I have one tiny little nitpick.
Sure.
And it's a nitpick for you and for Peter David. He did this in his Ocean comics, Popeye, The Marriage of Popeye and Olive Oil.
Yeah.
Where do you get off expecting that Bernice can get kidnapped? Right?
He did do that, didn't he?
I mean, I don't really. I say that in a way to be really snide about it because I think it's funny. But I mean, honestly, like you don't even have to answer, because I'm kind of expecting that to be a plot point with how faithfully been everything else. But I remember when Bernice first showed up and how hard Castor tried to get rid of her.
Yeah.
So
there is something coming. Yeah, I won't show my cards, but I got. It's going to be an interesting summer. It's going to be an interesting summer coming up.
If I may bring up ye old fan theory that Princess Peach gets herself kidnapped to be with Bowser. Just saying.
I'm not sure if a Whiffle hen is capable of that level of strategic thought.
Whiffle.
Maybe. I don't know. And will we ever see a Whiffle rooster?
Or
are they like nymphs that it's like only females?
I'm just saying the existence of the Whiffle hen implies the existence of the Whiffle rooster.
If there is a Whiffle rooster, I do know what color it is. And that's a vague.
It's a vague commentary. Okay. We'll move on. We'll move on from that plot point.
All right. Here's my question to the man who, if I understand, may be the world's leading Popeye expert. Right? Do you think that Wimpy is a G-rated metaphor for an alcoholic?
I have never considered that. I see a perplexity to Wimpy. I will say that. And I think one of the current storylines that I'm doing with the Wimpies, plural, is kind of exploring that just a bit. And who is Wimpy at his core? And does Wimpy need to stay constantly the some people may say yes, the mooching scamp that he is. I mean, you're the characters. There are people that you're at your core of who you are. But does a character have the potential? Does a person, do you and I, have the potential to grow and wrestle with some of these core issues of who our characters are?
And Cartoonicus may not have gotten to this yet, part of the story yet.
Oh, okay.
But after the New Year's party, and we're introduced to I'm going to forget her name.
Caledonia,
the delightful redhead.
Caledonia Reinhardt, yeah. An original character, by the way, that I co-created with my wife Jennifer.
One of the things that I think is remarkable about that character, first of all, she's she's so like she has a purity to her that I just find endearing. There's this intrinsic wholesomeness to her, and I think that's great. But the other thing is that Wimpy as a gag never had a reason to be more than, just the bloke, right? He's a faithful friend, and that's about it, right?
Yeah.
He'd go to the ends of the earth for you, but also he also never pick up a check. So there's this dichotomy to it, and there's never an in Popeye that I've read. There's never been which is one of the things about the movie that I did not like, is I thought that Popeye snatching Sweet Pea away not Popeye, Wimpy snatching Sweet Pea away was out of character. He's a mooch, but he never wanted anything bad to happen to you.
Yeah.
But with that, seeing Wimpy in a position to rise to the call of a greater, duty, because he's inspired by Caledonia, is something that's been I've enjoyed that thoroughly.
Well, thank you.
Well, tell them how
Oh, come here. Come here. I already mentioned that you're a co-creator of Caledonia Kind Art. You had to tell. You're telling me to tell them. Why don't you have? This is Jennifer. For those that are coming in, she's my wife.
Hello.
My favorite Louis Jordan song is Caledonia.
That's Louis Jordan and Tim Penny 5. It's an old 30s and 40s band, big band. Oh, sorry, just go ahead.
So when we were thinking of a name and how her character would flesh out, I said, she needs to be, it's Caledonia. Like, Caledonia, why is your big head so hard? So she had to have like a big head and
Blustery a little bit.
Just a very character person. And so I wanted that. I thought that would match Wimpy and it would give Wimpy a girlfriend. I think he needed a girlfriend.
Hey, close your ears for a second. Close your ears. There's a little bit of Jennifer.
There's a reason that Caledonia is my favorite song.
Yeah.
I'm from Texas after all.
Yeah, she's a live wire.
Bye, puppy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is great. From the chat, Ryan says, fun fact, in his first appearance, Wimpy was eating spaghetti, not a burger. I thoroughly approve of both of those choices. In fact, I'm hungry now.
What if we put spaghetti on the burger?
I have done that in the past. It's not worth the effort. Sauce is plenty good. If you're gonna go with pizza burger, is great. But okay, I want to chime in on this comment. Superman versus Popeye on spinach. Who you betting on? Are we talking about comic Popeye or cartoon Popeye? Because those are actually different skill sets, and they play.
I have never
different medium.
seen a version of the old comic where spinach was a thing. To my knowledge, spinach started getting shilled by the animation companies.
Yeah, it did transfer into the comics, and it was definitely a factor, but it was not a Superman level factor. See, Popeye, here's my thing. Popeye places himself within the realm of American tall tales, right?
Yeah.
Of Pecos Bill and Alfred Bullhorn Stormalong and Paul Bunyan and Popeye.
Yeah.
And I feel, and maybe I'm wrong on this, I don't know, you can tell me if you think, Scott, but I feel like Popeye has his origin in that kind of a hero story.
I agree.
Yeah.
I know I've got some, I brought props. I'm not saying it's on this disc or so, but I've watched some of these commentaries, and I'm not trying to, they're better Popeye experts than me. I'm not even going to pretend to be the Popeye expert, but there's some that's called Popeye the First Superhero or things like that, and I can't agree. I can't agree with that. I agree that with you that he comes out of that tall tale mythology, and I don't see him as a, and that's part of my point too. That I did that one for Superman Day, where I had Superman kind of jokingly suggest that he gets cape, that and even Popeye is, I am what I am. He's Popeye. He's not. I don't see him as a member of the Justice League or anything like that.
Right.
That's
Yeah, I think that Popeye was always meant to be tough, and he explained it away as well. I ate my spinach, and then the cartoons kind of did that thing where he pulls out a can, eats the spinach, and gains super strength for a little time. And it's like, no, Popeye's always strong. In the comics, he's always strong. This is just explaining why he is strong.
And to be fair, of course,
it's not a power up.
You see Popeye being like from his first appearance, right? Popeye is strong enough to man a 12-person ship by himself.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? So he's already superhumanly tough.
Yeah.
Right. But he rubs the head of the Whifflehead, those three magic feathers, and he's bulletproof because he's also luckier than possible.
Yeah. I think it starts with I mean, he already is as tough as nails, but I in my little head canon, it was the Whifflehead that gave him his first, boost, and still does. And maybe I'm being simplistic, but I always kind of looked at the spinach like Pac-Man eating the power pill in an arcade game.
Yeah.
Gets his power up, but and I know there was going back to the Bella Zaboli comic strip years in the 50s, there was a time period where that even in the newspaper comic strips, he wasn't eating spinach and even given up spinach. Mm-hmm. But yet in the cartoons, the famous studio cartoons, it was part of the shtick. Every cartoon, you ate that spinach. So I'm trying to blend both the cartoons and the comics, and
I noticed that.
Strips. Yeah, it's my own kind of That's why I really kind of call this my own alternate universe. So you don't need to hold me exactly to. Well, on this episode he did this, or whatever. Because I'm a fan.
I mean, there were literally cartoons where he was Aladdin, so I don't think there's an exact canon.
Well, I think if you get past the New Year's Eve, you'll see. I had him as Captain Kirk for a little mini storyline. So I do kind of like that tradition of just the goofy stuff. But I'm just trying to have fun.
Well, and that actually brings up our highlighted comment of John Morgan Neal, who I've never crossed paths with. He was, I know, associated with Fanzing, but I believe when I was there, he was away and absent from the site. And then when he returned, that was the end of the episode, the end of the merry-go-round, I think. If I remember my timeline correctly.
Well, may I say a few kind words about Mr. John Morgan Neal? He is a scholar and a gentleman. He is the writer of Aim Geronimo, an independent comic book series that he writes and works with artist Todd Fox, who does some stuff with Marvel. And they were part of the old Shooting Star comic days, so he's my longtime pal. I've known him as long as I've known Hutch. And Mr. Neal, who's also a Texan, is our moderator at the Shanty Funnies Facebook group. He's also been a moderator for Chuck Dixon's Dixonverse for decades, and all around good guy. And if you've been reading past the New Year's Eve storyline, he lent his persona for the character Juan Morgan Neal before Zod as kind of a continuity cop timeline, as Popeye calls him, his parole officer. So I that's my little homage and tip of my hat to my pal John. He is. I know not too long ago, John and I were talking about the Captain Strong, the old was it Carrie Bates, John? I forget. Around 1973-74 Action Comics, where they kind of did a little Popeye homage.
I love the Captain Strong stories.
And I think that was one of the first comics I ever read as a kid, and that had a big influence on that Superman. Also, that Superman one-page story I did for Superman Day. Sorry, I'm rambling. I ramble a lot in my thoughts.
Yep. No, I will tell you about Captain Strong. I absolutely love Captain Strong's stories. Back when I was trying to break into DC, I had a folder of samples, and one of those was a Captain Strong script, and did not get picked up. That's what happened there. Although I'm pretty sure a couple of my pitches got picked up by other writers, but
that's happened to me. I'll just leave it at that. That has happened to me. I've witnessed.
We don't got to talk about it here, though. We can move on.
I'll be good. I'll be good. I'll be good. Oh yeah.
So one of the questions that I have, I mean, I love, one of the things that I love is that you're playing with this universe, right? When Blondie and Dagwood, I love Blondie and Dagwood. Conceptually, historically, I love. One of these days, we're having a Blondie and Dagwood show here. It's going to happen. Okay. I don't know when.
I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I've been reading strips since the '80s.
Awesome.
At least,
awesome. Yeah. Well, I'll keep you in mind when we finally get around to that one. But I love how you pulled them in to use. I think they're great characters. You've got the broad panoply of available Popeye characters. One of the questions I have is, as you're building your sandbox, what are the things that you are using to kind of build the frame around that? What is your guiding principle?
Okay. First of all, when I got into this, when I knew Popeye was going to go public domain on January 1st, 2025, I did 4 experimental comic strips. Those first four episodes, and I wasn't sure what I was going to be doing. I didn't know if this was going to work. And as a matter of fact, the first 4 I did, I heard crickets chirping, which is kind of funny because right now I hear real crickets chirping outside. So I didn't get a lot of response. Maybe 2 or 3 people, oh, that's cool, I like it, But it's also family and friends that said something, and they're like, okay, I don't think this is going to work. And I pretty much left it alone up until Thanksgiving. So I went from basically February to November. Wasn't going to do Sea Shanty Funnies. And then something happened. I think I'm going to credit writer Chuck Dixon, and my family and friends too. But Chuck Dixon says, I really like what you're doing with the Sea Shanty Funnies with Popeye. Please keep it up. I'd like to see more. And I guess at first it was like, okay. There are some legitimate, Chuck's words were encouragement. And so I literally a day or 2 before Thanksgiving, I started doing a Thanksgiving storyline. And I just, the scene in Forrest Gump when he just starts running. I just started running, and he runs across America. That was how I started, really, since November. So I do have enough storylines I've got plotted out for the next 2 years in my head, but I'm also kind of keeping it loose enough that I could turn on a dime and do something small. But I'm still finding my way. I've got storylines. I write scripts. Sometimes I plot out 30 episodes ahead, and there's been like 2 or 3 times where I had to put it in the trash. And I will say, without getting into too much detail, I was going to introduce Betty Boop for around New Year's. And with some of the controversy that there are some groups that have the rights to Betty Boop, even though she is in the public domain. It's kind of the dog version of her first few appearances where she looked like a dog. It looked like it'd be too much of a headache to try to use Betty Boop. So I had to shift hard and change some things. And so I've been really, even though I've got stuff plotted out and I know where I'm going, I'm still almost on a daily basis, flying by the seat of my pants. So it's like one, it's half and half of what I'm doing there with stuff that's already plotted out. It's like if I go off course, I might do a little thing here too, but then I have to kind of get back on course to where the storyline is. But I think the chaos of Popeye, just in general, and his world and his friends and foes, it kind of adds to that. It kind of gives to it. And I have to be careful because I have so many ideas, and if you want to say dangling plot lines, that I'm trying to kind of hit them all. And some of them have to be pushed back from. I wanted to do something with Joe Palooka, the boxer, and that story is kind of coming down the road.
Okay,
and
I knew that had to be a character.
Yep.
I couldn't figure out who.
Yeah, it's the original version of Joe Palooka. And
Joe Palooka. That was actually a really great addition. I can't wait to see how you play that out, because
I've got a nice little, in my head at least. I'm looking forward to doing that one, and I'm now getting to address the Hamburglar Meister story with the alternate evil. I don't see the bad version of Wimpy, or the badder version of Wimpy, and but there's other stories. So I do have these dangling plot lines. I'm trying not to get too off course in just the chaos, but. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
no, that does go a long way into talking about it. I just so enjoy, like, I'm flipping through it right now to look for a particular page because I want to go ahead and bring that out, but just the fun. I just absolutely love how you've gone with it.
Yeah. If anybody's here hasn't been, you can go to shantyfunnies.com, and
it should be in the link should be in the description.
Yes.
Oh.
If you scroll down on that page, I've got things I'm starting to break them up into kind of different little chapters of the best way I can put it. So you could if you scroll, right now that's pretty much this week's episodes. There's a Hamburglar Meister, and there's Caledonia in the purple, the original character that's Wimpy and her are dating right now. And I've had some guest characters and parody characters. But if you keep on scrolling down, I break it down into the chapters for those that if you go past this week's comics.
This is new. I didn't see these.
That's been this week. So now here we go. So if you keep on scrolling down, there you can catch up from the beginning. So there are the episodes. So you can there's the first four episodes where, if you want to call it my experiment to see if I could do this, I was trying to, for my own self, to see if I can make this work, and that was my very first one.
John says it was Carrie Bates.
Oh, okay.
Captain Strong, I'm sure. So
I do need to ask, Scott, have you ever gotten any kind of feedback from the people who own Popeye or anybody related to that?
I gotta be very careful what I say here.
Sure.
I
don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah, I will say this: it is not from the. I have not heard from anyone that's in Popeye. Okay. I'll say this: I haven't heard directly from anyone that's working on Popeye or King Features, but I don't want to single out this person, but there is another prominent comic or cartoonist that works for King Features that does a different famous comic strip, who said some encouraging things to me that he or she really is enjoying it. So just getting that kind of feedback from a true person who I respect and love their work, that meant the world to me. But I haven't heard from King Features.
That's good almost. It's like I hear back immediately.
Either a cease or desist, or it's hey, we'd like you to do a special project. I prefer to be a special project. Not that I'm gunning for anyone's job, but I'm doing my own thing and having fun with this being public domain, and that gives me, I think, the creative freedom to do whatever I want to do, and I'm enjoying it because I do have a day job, but I do think I wouldn't mind down the road taking on some other actual. I've done some stuff. For those that don't know, I've done some stuff with DC Comics in the past, but I would love to be able to do something official for Popeye one day.
That was always the dream of everybody who worked at Fanzine, was that the ideal hope is that somebody's going to read your fanzine and go, well, you should be doing the comic for real, and call you up. But that doesn't happen in real life usually.
Yeah, I've been very appreciative of the kind words I've received from many Popeye fans who I respect, and
That's cool.
that even you guys, that keeps me going. That keeps me in the motivation, because it's not a paycheck I'm getting. It's just the feedback that, hey, I like this. I'm entertained. I'd love to see more. So as long as people right now, as long as I got the energy and the desire, creative desire, I'm going to keep doing it as I can. I'm having right now. I am having fun.
I do want to highlight one quick thing here, because I have questions that I want answered as a fan. So I'm going to move your screen, Cartoonicus. Here we've got this great little Christmas card of everybody. And I have questions. Specifically, who is this back here? Behind Olive Oil, director behind Olive Oil. Are you at liberty to tell me who this is?
She is a character that's no longer in the life of Castor Oil. I will say that. But Castor Oil was previously married, and in my little continuity, and I think even now, and officially in the official continuity, she is the mother of Diesel Oil, who is Castor Oil's daughter. And Seagar had two storylines that almost had two different paths that kind of contradicted itself about Castor Oil's wife. And so in my storyline, I'll just say, without giving too much away, because I may revisit this, Castor in my alternate universe is divorced, and that's I know in the current, I'm not trying to compare myself with what's going on in the current Popeye, but I know she's in there too. But Celinda Oil, I think I'm pronouncing her name. My mother's name is Linda, so it's Celinda. It's how I've always called it. But that was supposed to be her. She was visiting her daughter, in the family for Christmas and the holidays in that storyline. So it was just kind of subtle. I've got his Aunt Jones.
I thought it might have been.
Yeah.
And I was not certain.
So that's who that was supposed to be, but it was more of an Easter egg.
So here's another, which is fine. Another question that I have on the subject is of the original comics. I know from having read it. I know from having read about it, I should say, because I've not read these strips because they've not been available. They've not been reprinted. But I understand that Davy Jones, was a character, in Popeye, was in fact his uncle.
Right.
Are those stories that he takes place in, or have those been put into the public domain? Have those been not renewed? What do we know about that?
The Davy Jones material came out of the Seagar stuff, and some of that stuff came over into post his death. But the Aunt Jones character, who I have there kind of behind Olive, and she kind of helped raise Popeye as a boy. And I'll be upfront. I do subscribe to the King Features Comics Kingdom website, where you can read the most recent comic strips that Randy Milholland writes and draws. And I know Randy's addressing right now currently this week, as a matter of fact, is the past couple of weeks, Davy Jones. But I do have I'm looking at the Davy Jones stuff from back in the late 30s and 40s, actually. So in my mind, yeah, he's still there, and I've referenced him. So yeah, it's a gray area because some of that stuff's in they stay still in not in the public domain, and some may be. If you look at the different scholars and what they say that King Features did or did not renew, but I haven't. I've got so many storylines going on right now that I haven't really had to deal directly.
Oh yeah,
with the Jones
I
family.
wouldn't assume you could possibly address everything that could
No.
be addressed. I was just curious about the station of that.
Yeah, I
Like,
haven't. The Goons.
I find that really interesting. I had a, I find that Davy Jones as a character not necessarily related to Popeye, but just in terms of sea lore to be fascinating.
It is, yeah.
In many ways, not only because being of Welsh extraction as I am, Davy Jones is a pretty common Welsh name.
Okay.
And so the presence of Welsh sailors in larger aquatic lore gets overlooked a lot of times, and so that's one of those things that I've always thought was like, well, this seems like it ought to have some sort of home.
Yeah. I will say this. I've already talked. I don't know if my one of the is Joshua Garrett here by chance. Josh Garrett. I don't know if he's in the audience, but he's an old high school friend who was in the U.S. Navy, and I had a discussion with him. I'm not trying to show all my cards because this might not happen until fall. Fall or even early winter coming up, but I have a future storyline that I'll just say this: it's about the deep sea. So we may or may not see his Uncle Davy Jones. We'll see, but I've got something special planned.
Very cool.
For
Very
Popeye
cool.
in the future.
No, like I said, I'm always excited, always interested in that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun.
And worked on that. So now I also know that you hinted, and you probably don't, I'm not asking you to reveal any cards on the table here, but I know that you've hinted that of course Popeye's got nieces and nephews,
Right.
that or nephews I should say, that you've shown on the strip from the Fleischer cartoons. And you've hinted that there is a sibling out there in the world. Is that something that you feel like you want to talk about at all?
Not yet.
Mother's side,
I will say,
what are we looking at?
It may not be official canon, but I do know of and I know that it seems to contradict things, but I'm being so vague. I'm sorry, everybody, but in my mind, there is a sibling to Popeye, even though Pappy has said many times, "You're my only child." I do believe, and I have found who one of the parents is of the quadruplets, the nephews.
Yep.
And I do want to in the future explore that. And again, this is my alternate universe, so it may not be official in someone else's universe, Popeye, but it'll be for this Sea Shanty Funnies. So
Well, I've always thought that Pappy was sort of a liar anyway. So.
Oh yeah, he's a scoundrel.
He's absolutely.
And, he's married, and yet if you look at some storylines, especially even in the Zaboli years. I mean, one of the last ones the Zaboli did before Sagendorf took over. I think around 1959, 58, 58, 59. Poop Deck Pappy, he has this hot to trot little gold digging girlfriend, in that storyline, and I loved it. But I see Poop Deck Pappy as a player. I'll just say that.
Well, and here's a little interesting tidbit that I'm going to tell you. I kind of have my own ideas about it that I may end up using someday for my own thing. Who knows? But about a year ago, I sat down and I read, or I listened to, I should say, the first Charlie Chan novel, The House Without Keys. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not.
I haven't read it. No.
The House Without Keys. And it is a murder mystery set in Hawaii in 1925. And in it, there is the main character is this very stiff-lipped, like rigid, crusty 20-something Harvard graduate John Quincy. I'm going to forget his last name, but it's John Quincy. Winterslip. And he is sent to Hawaii to fetch his wayward aunt to come back to high society out east. And he gets there and is immediately embroiled in a murder mystery because his forgotten and disavowed uncle has been murdered. Because the aunt was living with her brother that everyone wrote off because he went off and had adventures and never came home again. So everybody, during the course of his adventures, he meets Charlie Chan, and it's just an amazing whodunit. But in following up on one of the clues, I got to tell you guys, this is such a great story because when we first are introduced to Charlie Chan, he points out 5 clues, right? And all 4 of them are red herrings, right? And one of them is the clue that actually solves the case. But the first 4 are all vital clues for a totally unrelated mystery. That's part of the main story. So as he's tracking, as Chan and Winterslip are tracking down these red herrings, there are these other mysteries that are unfolding. That are part of this greater world in which these characters are existing. So you never feel cheated. It's not the clue, but it's still a clue, and it's still this really complicated, wonderful world that the author, whose name escapes me at the minute, comes up with. The guy wrote was 7 Keys to Bald Plate as well.
Okay.
I can't remember the author's name at the minute, but anyway, in tracking down one of the red herrings, Winterslip ends up in this dive bar in Chinatown, and he's lured there from somebody who sends a mysterious message, and then they attempt to Shanghai him, and a red-haired brawler shows up to try to beat the tar out of this guy. And I'm reading this and I'm like, is this Popeye? Well, it's definitely not Popeye. But
in your head,
I'm surprised if it's not some, mysterious unknown brother out there in the world.
Yeah.
I've got a question I wanted to ask Scott about writing Popeye. Is it hard to remember to make him? I mean, the way Popeye talks is it hard to keep that going?
Wow.
Because usually it's it said I was reading the Christmas one. It said we hope you, and I'm like, shouldn't it be Hopesk or something like that? I mean, the way some of the old ways that he's written, it's really tough to get through because they're really pushing the illiteracy thing. The fact that he's self-educated, and it's kind of bad.
That is a good question. I will say that at first, the first few rounds, I'm flying by the seat of my pants and just think about what, the voice actor Jack Mercer, how he would say things in the cartoons, or think about some of Segar's writing. And I would, I there's give and take. But what I started doing probably end of last year, I started a dictionary. I've got Microsoft OneNote.
Yeah.
And and I read. I'm kind of showing off here. This is my portfolio of 1944 comics that I have, and these are the Sundays. And then, for example, to show you what kind of a crazy nut I am, these are the original dailies. So I've been archiving these by year. I collect them, but what I'm doing is I'm reading them. I'll just start reading something, and I'll for example, I just pulled this randomly. Popeye says, "So you're our war correspondent," and how he spells it. So when I find these kind of weird words or phrases that he uses, I type them into my dictionary. So I am actually trying to use Popeye vocabulary that was used, 70 years ago. I'm trying to find these words. So I'm trying to build. I write it, and I write it how I think it should sound. But every now and then I'll say, okay, well, how would Popeye say this?
Yeah.
And I may find it. I may actually find it. Other times I may just, well, this is how I think he would say. So I just kind of create it myself. So I am really trying to do my due diligence and use the real phrases that he really used in comic strips from 70 years ago. But yet,
I was not expecting such an in-depth response that you're
I'm
making a dictionary.
I do have a long dictionary that helps me with phrases.
Do you just dread that you'll have him say integrity and he says integrity, and then somebody will write in, that's not how he says it, he says integrity.
I did have that happen. Something
Really?
like that, where someone probably messaged me and said, well, that's not how Popeye is going to say this word. I'm actually now pulling it up, my little
crazy.
dictionary. But
Well, I think it's a little silly.
But hey,
I would think it's a
look,
little silly
I'm a
to insist
fanboy. You know that from my Green Arrow days of DC Comics.
Yeah.
I can know all the details, stuff. And I can understand and respect, that there are some fans that really want us, Popeye fans, that they want me to do the best I can, to stay true, because they get joy, out of that. And one of the first ones that I made a major mistake on was just the word to be or not to be. And I had to, I still write scripts, and I'm writing to this. Then after I write a script with Popeye's dialogue, and then I have to kind of go back and edit myself. Like, okay, I got to change to ta, or the to just th with an apostrophe. So I've got to do these little fixes on the vocabulary. It's I don't know. It's part of the challenge and fun.
Well,
I over-explain sometimes.
I think it would be a little silly to insist that he would have to say things exactly the same every single time too. Like, as a not as a strike against you making a dictionary, but in terms of like talking to people that are like too pure, like he wouldn't say it like that. I was like, well, you don't talk the same way all the time either,
Yeah, not to mention you don't talk the same way all the time either.
No. True. Well, here's one. Like, I just pulled up one. Talk about language. So language in my dictionary, Popeye would call it lank, LANK dash widge, WIDGE. So it's for language is language. That's how he said it. I wrote it down.
Oh, that's funny.
Human is human, HOOMAN, almost like a Ferengi would say it. It's pretty. Anyway, I'm rambling.
No, that's fine.
No, that's good.
We do have a question from the chat. So I feel you staying true to the original, but how are you making this version your own? What are you adding to the story?
What I'm adding to the story is I want to move the ball. I'm not trying to replicate exactly what these other creators did. I know this actually. Hutch pulled up this book that we both share, and there's almost like a Bible directory from Bud Sackendorf, who said Sweet Pea has always got to stay in his his little nightgown. You don't show his feet, because right before Sackendorf took over, they were starting to let Sweet Pea age, and he had a little sailor outfit and shorts and shoes, and I've got Olive, and I know I'm not the first, but Olive and Popeye are married, and I don't want to spoil some things, but there is stuff about family going on in the current storyline, and I want to move the characters about 5 years from the classic era, while still respecting the classic era, and explore new storylines or growth for the characters. So I think that's the primary thing that I'm doing. I do want to keep it in a retro style. So I am influenced by the art of Zackendorf and Segar and the Fleischer Studios and Zaboli. So the way they draw, I don't apologize for drawing Popeye like he might have been done somewhere between 1929 and 1985 or something. I know other artists. I know the current artists. They've got their own distinct way of how they their own I'm not just literally talking about the visuals, their own hand and how they draw, but I purposely kind of wanted to make it feel like it came from the past. I got the newspaper, quality printing and the coloring and the Ben-Day dots thing and that kind of going on, and I wanted to feel like it came from yesteryear. I do, but yet I feel like I am taking the ball and I'm moving the story where it could have gone somewhere in the 70s or 80s that it didn't go, if that makes sense. If that's and I'm not trying to badmouth any present or even going back 20 years. I mean, I'm just now in my life reading the Bobby London Popeye comic strips that took place from about 1985 to 91, 92. Somebody out there is a Popeye expert can tell me. Ryan, you might be out there. Maxwell might be able to tell me. And I'm reading these for the first time right now, and but they're so. I'm not saying they're dated, but they're dated in the 80s. They are set in that time period that, and I respect that and they're funny, but it's a different. I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around the Bobby London, and I'm enjoying it. I am enjoying it, but it was not what I was expecting or used to. But you also see Bobby London's love for the history too, and it's great. I like that he did his own take. But for example, I'm trying to flesh out not only the Popeye and the main characters, but some of the secondary characters and the town itself and the environment and just the world they're in. So I'm trying to do my own spin on that too.
So like when they were set in the 80s, like he'd be walking past an arcade machine or something like that instead of a pinball machine.
Matter of fact, that's one of the comic strips. I think Sweet Pea's playing an arcade game. Yeah. They bring up Cabbage Patch Kids in the storyline and things like that. And it's like, well, I'm not. That's why I'm in the retro past, because I won't be bringing up, though I guess I did have Elvis Costello in last week's. That was a spoof, for I think to make John Morganil laugh if he's out there.
It is a parody comic in the end.
It is a parody comic.
So you can break with that every now and then. Yeah.
I am going. I'm a big fan of Heath Ledger's Knight's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
We got Queen, music of Queen or Bowie or Golden Years playing. And in a way, I'm kind of treating this a little bit like a Knight's Tale. So I will inject stuff that really makes no sense or shouldn't be there from time to time. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes I have Easter eggs in the background that shouldn't be there, but I don't say, well, this story is taking place in 1956. No, I don't say that, but yet in my head, it's somewhere back there between 1940 to 60 or something, to about the time period of Andy Griffith's show. But that's kind of where I'm at. But some stuff from the 70s creeps in, and even the 80s, I've had a few things creep in. So I just try to keep it's just vague.
So when will you be able to use Bluto/Brutus?
Bluto, yeah. There's a gray area, but there is also there's documentation that Bluto was actually in the public domain, and that is why when I started off the series with Sinbad the Sailor, who is in the public domain, to be which is basically Bluto is Sinbad. But I have learned that, for example, I was under the understanding originally back in 2024 that I'm trying to look at my notes right here. I do have notes that Bluto. His first appearance is September 12th, 1932, and technically he should have entered the public domain until January 1st, 2028. But I did find that, and I've got links and I've got documentation, legal documentation that actually back in March of 2025, there's stuff online that proves that he actually is in the public domain because things weren't renewed. So technically, I did in one episode, I did show Bluto. So Bluto, in my mind, is fair game. But
what about the Fleischer cartoons? I mean, he was a bad guy,
he's and there are you got it right there too. I mean, the Fleischer, Bluto is there. Some of the early famous studio, So that stuff. I've got a whole list of documented cartoons or something you find online that
Brutus, however, was later.
I was gonna say, can
Right,
someone
correct.
remind me what happened with that?
that's a long story, but long story short is Bluto was the original character, and at some point, I think it was Famous Studios. Ryan Maxwell, if you're out there, you might be able to say something. But my understanding is that the cartoon studios and Paramount didn't think they had the rights to Bluto, so they named him Brutus. And then moving into the 70s, or the late 60s and 70s, especially when Sagendorf came back to take over the newspaper strip, he didn't think he had the right to use the word Bluto, so he continued using Brutus in the comic strip. And then at some point, some lawyer discovered, oh, we can use Bluto the whole time. And then there have been, modern writers of like, they said at one point that was Bluto Brutus is one character, like his whole name. And then no, he's they're brothers, twin brothers.
Yeah, I think it was
Burlow, also brother. And then there's
I think it was Ron Fortier in the Ocean comics that had them be brothers.
Okay.
And I'm actually pals with Ron, and
Okay.
I personally, I think that, and not because like he talks to me and returns my email, but despite that, I think it's a brilliant idea because one of the things that you have with the Brutus character, especially in like the King Features cartoons, is that he lives next door to Popeye. And he's sort of a frenemy. He's not trying to kill,
Right.
Popeye, whereas Bluto was trying to kill Popeye.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
that's how he played them in the two
Yes.
comics for Ocean Comics back in the early 90s.
And I even think
I love it.
I'm doing this. Brutus is. I agree. He's a little bit. He's more on the. I always consider Brutus to be more on the chubby chubby side, a little bit of an oaf. And he is. I'm reading some of the Sagendorf stuff from the '70s, and they are borderline frenemies, and this the comic strips. I know in the cartoons sometimes there's confusion. Like one day in the cartoon they're best of friends who are rivals, and the next day they're the mortal enemies. And I agree with you. I see Bluto as the tougher, meaner. I'm mean. I'm so darn mean. That he's the guy that sees red, and he's the bad brother.
And now
And then Burlow, and then there's Burlow from the 50. I know, you're like, who's Burlow? Burlow was the brother that was introduced in the newspaper strips in the late 50s, and it makes sense because there's a character. Well, I'll say this: watch Friday's comic strip coming up. I've already finished it, but there's a character introduced in the 60s. Like I think it's the late 60s. I know in the 70s. I first saw the character in a George Wildman comic book in the 70s. But Hardtack, who is Brutus's nephew, he's not Bluto's son, and it made sense that he's Burlow's son. And Burlow, he was a friend, and he fought Popeye, and then he kind of frenemy, and he really wasn't used a lot. But so there's more than I call them in my own headcanon the Bruise Brothers. They're the Bruisers, so they're that's how I. But they're brothers. There are a lot of brothers out there, and then there's stuff. I don't want to show my cards, but there's some other interesting stuff about who's the mom. Is it Sea Hag or is it the other lady that was shown in the Sagendorf? And so I've got my own continuity in my head and I will be addressing that in the future.
That's awesome.
I don't need the Sea Hag to be Brutus's mom. It's like, sometimes the universes get too small. It's like, introduce another woman.
She called him for a while, called him Sonny, but it's a whole convoluted thing. Even I'm trying to get my head wrapped around it. And I know, I don't know. It's just I'm doing my, so I can't. I know they're going to be nitpickers. Fan. Mm-hmm. I am a fanboy myself when I say fanboys. I know that they're I get nitpicked and say, oh, this is not part of the continuity. You shouldn't do this or that. But I got to have a little bit of creative wiggle room. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
From the chat, Sad Robot asks, why are there more Blutos than Mario Brothers? But if you watch the most recent animated film, there are more Mario Brothers. Only 2 of them were plumbers. So they didn't get sucked into the adventures. But the other ones are out there, doing other Italian things, being on South Beach and whatever.
What I think is crazy is the connection between Mario and Donkey Kong and Popeye and was it Nintendo?
Yep.
You know, the originally did the Donkey Kong, and that the original Donkey Kong game was going to be about Popeye rescuing Olive, and then King Features didn't give it to them, so they made Donkey Kong with Mario and then later on, after Donkey Kong did so well, they're like, oh, King Features like, well, yeah, we should have let you do it. So then now we have the Popeye, or now in the 80s we had the Popeye arcade, which I put more quarters in than I can ever imagine. That
Well, and the crazy thing about that too is that, like, and I can't remember the exact details on it too. Oh, I remember what it was. Universal sued Nintendo because they said that Donkey Kong was infringing on the King Kong trademark. But there was no King Kong trademark. So Universal ended up losing all of that money.
That's funny.
Because it was determined that King Kong was already in the public domain.
Now,
they did not sign for a trademark.
I am peeking over at the chat, and there's Isaac Clark mentioned. I think it would be cool to see Popeye fight monsters again. Popeye versus Godzilla. Now it's not me. I know that I saw it on. I haven't read it, but I do know that there is another artist writer team out there that are doing Popeye the Kaiju Hunter or something like that. Yep. So there are some people that are doing that, and there are storylines. I've got a little big book. I still have it. It's over here. He's fighting. Popeye's fighting a giant sea serpent underwater. So and I did kind of do an Easter egg about a sea serpent in one of the. I did a little mini series spinoff called Pookie Jones during Christmas time when I was taking a little bit of a break. But I think I will be. I do have some ideas for some kaiju-like type characterization to happen, and but it's not anytime soon. But I'll keep that in the back of my mind.
How many years is it before the goons become part of the strip? I can't. It was many years into, so it's got to be several years before you can get to them.
Well, actually, some of her stuff, Alice the Goon stuff, some of that is in a gray area in the public domain, and I did introduce Alice recently in the last couple of weeks she kind of did a little cameo appearance in the stands next to Olive Oil, and
that's right.
All the stuff that's in my mind, everything that happened in the Seagar storylines is canon before he died. Okay. So all that's in my stuff. I do have I introduced early on a hybrid version called the Crab Ragoons. And on this Crab Ragoon Island, and I will say that is coming up sooner than later, in this whole search for Bernice the Whifflehen. But we'll see a kind of a spin-off of the Goons, kind of like how you have the Romulans and the Vulcans. So I have the Crab Ragoons, but I do think in the future I do have a storyline in mind with Alice and Olive down the road. And I would like to do more stuff with the Goons, but it's not going to be in 2026.
So, in your mind, is Alice the Goon actually a female goon?
Yes.
Or okay.
She's actually a biological mother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I always thought it was like they were. I always thought it was like they were genderless, and then one just put on a little hat with a flower and called himself Alice.
I don't think it's in this one, but there was one. Maybe it was 1939-ish, 40, 38. I can't remember if it was Seagar or Zaboli, but there was a storyline before Alice got clothed where she is there with her child.
Interesting.
But I don't know if that's ever been brought back up. I've read a lot, but I haven't read everything. And I feel like it's kind of funny. I'm reading all these older comic strips and comic books and watching old cartoons. I'm doing it for fun and my pleasure as a Popeye fan, but it's like research and development is what my wife. Are you watching this for just research purposes? Well, everything's research purposes, I guess.
Yeah.
When I'm reading and watching.
You have to remember that back when they were first writing this, or any series, it's like you'll throw out something as a gag, like, well, that's what my brother's kid does, and it's like now we have to remember that he has a brother and that brother has a kid, and it's like on The Office they made a joke about one character. It's like the worst day of my life. Well, that and when my sister, that funeral was the worst day of my life. Well, that and my sister's, and it's like, so we have to remember that she has a dead sister now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's somebody somewhere has to be making a continuity book and remembering all these throwaway gags.
Oh yeah, yeah. We did that with Forces for years. We just were like, and we found ourselves like checking, like there were, like especially with like we had throwaway character of one of the main characters, Chad, his father, where we had mixed up the number of wives he had. So we had to go back and change that.
Wow.
Funny.
Yeah. There. You know, I grew up. I know Hutch did too. I'm sure you did too, Matthew. But you know, I grew up with Bronze Age comics, and a lot of times you'd have editor notes that were in the comic strip themselves.
Oh yeah.
Risk that says, hey, see this issue where Batman did this, or or hey, this is Batman.
I love that.
So, like for example, I'm giving you a little inside baseball again. Friday, for example, I'm introducing something, and when I write these, I think about family and friends that are not hardcore fanboy fans and know the inside and out. So I have to write for them too. And every now and then I'll leave an editor's note in a yellow box. Like, for example, I'll make some sort of reference that kind of help them know that this character or this event happened. So and plus I'm trying to keep things straight in the whole continuity. But I do leave little editor notes every now and then for the newbies, to read or to understand something, or just clarification, especially even some old time fans. Well, in that issue in 1967, he did this, but in this one, so sometimes I have to, differentiate or explain something, and I try not to over explain, but I am doing that. And I do think, like, for example, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday, maybe it was today. I've been doing these key moments where I'm taking stuff that really happened in cartoons and comic strips and comics, and I'm doing a key moment and kind of redoing my own interpretation of drawing it. But I reference it and say, this. But in a way, I get to do a little history lesson for if someone just wants to read it for the history, they can read it. But then if those that are wanting to know the backstory or how it applies to what I'm doing currently, it's there too. Thank you, Dribble Saw. Those edited notes are great. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, they were in the comics back then. I agree, they were great back then. They helped me.
Well, I'm a huge fan of the editor's notes. I think that's so important.
Right.
We've got those we've had those in our comics as well. I just think it makes it immersive. By the way, we have been joined by Twitless.
Hey, what's up?
There he is.
And Angus, who wanted to be in the stream, I guess.
Hello there.
He just climbed up here. Sorry.
So thanks for coming along, Twitless. Now, did you get a chance to read Sea Shanty Funnies?
I got to read some of it. Yeah.
Since you are arriving later in the stream, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I wanted to come on late because I wanted to listen and kind of absorb, because this is my knowledge of Popeye is limited mostly to just general pop culture, I would say. My newspaper didn't carry Popeye. I had a very limited newspaper, so my newspaper experience was much more limited. We had a much smaller newspaper, so our funny pages was much smaller. So some of what I was reading, I then ended up was doing a little bit of digging just to get some general familiarity. I will say though that as a fan of Golden Age material and stuff from the 40s and even earlier, I was really I am interested in your project and your approach that you take to it, because it definitely is trying to feel very authentic. I do have some points of critique and also some points of a couple questions. And so the two of them kind of weave together a little bit. And that's also I wanted to wait till later, because I didn't want to jump in like initially with some of those. But I'll start with a couple of my questions. And I think these are kind of interesting because your comic, and Reese, if you want to scroll down so we can see a little bit of more of the strip.
Let me see if I can actually change my layout here and see if that affects.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, this is helpful. Okay, so this is a point of a small critique, but it's also kind of the question, but it's also a bit of something I guess to pick your brain, and it's something that I think is just indicative of the challenge of the project you're attempting, which is dealing with the nuances of copyright and trademark. And I wanted to ask you specifically more about trademark because I know that's where things get stickier. But one of the interesting challenges this comic has, and this is like the minor critique, I guess, is that I've not seen a comic in a while that had more almost disclaimers attached and almost necessary disclaimers, because I know you're threading a needle here, and like I said, so like the point of critique is that there's almost a there's almost more words on the page that have to deal with the legal ramifications of what you're doing than the actual comic itself.
Doesn't that suck?
It's like there's an interesting, like I said, there's just an interesting situation.
I have to interrupt you for a second, Witless, because I had thought about that, like I had acknowledged that in my mind, but I hadn't actually processed that was a thing.
Yeah, it's just
I saw it and I was like, okay, that's a thing, but I hadn't really like internalized it within my own like mental processes that that's what I was seeing. So when you start describing it, all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm covering my butt.
No, I get it. And that's because one of the things I know is that the situation I know, because I did just cursory glances at like, you know, some of the nuances between trademark and copyright, because copyright has to do with like if a particular strip, so like if a particular strip is like 85 whatever, a century old essentially, if we round up, you can reprint it. You can reprint it and sell it. It is copyright free. But trademark is a more persistent idea, which is the idea that a certain representation has to do with branding. Like McDonald's arch. You know, they get to keep that arch as long as they are in business and renew that trademark. And if you take that arch and try to sell something on it, they get to come after you. And so what's interesting is that we're in some unknown territory, or at least very poorly, somewhat uncharted. It's partially charted, or at least somewhat charted, in the sense that, like, I know that Conan the Barbarian is technically in the public domain, but if you put the name Conan on your stuff, like on the front cover, like that, because there's a trademark behind Conan, like the estate will still come get you. Now, I don't know how much of that is like, I don't know how well that will actually survive legal challenges in the future.
Yeah. Well, the thing is I will tell you this part with Conan.
Yeah.
Right. Conan would lose in court.
That's what I would wonder if it would, but you still have to have
Conan
someone
would
who's
lose in
willing.
court,
You still have to have someone who's willing to go do it.
The scratch to take them to court because their
Right.
pockets are so deep. That's the problem.
And so, but obviously, the same issue.
Lawsuit, and that should be a crime.
The same issue is obviously facing these characters as well. So I noticed that's why you call it Sea Shanty Funnies. Like that's that first little, okay, I don't put Popeye on the cover because whether or not that should survive a courtroom case. Who of us have the
Right.
millions of dollars to go try and fight that?
That's
right.
One of the differences with, not to speak for Scott,
Yeah.
right? One of the differences with Popeye is that Seagar invented the name Popeye, basically, as far as we know. And so other people have used that in the name out of the context of the thing itself.
Yeah,
So you get, like,
Popeyes is big
was
in the
oil,
South.
you
Yeah,
get Popeye the whatever. But
Popeye's
because-
chicken. Yeah,
right, Popeye's chicken.
Which for a while, Popeye, the comic character, was one of the representatives for 20 years, and then somewhere in the late 90s, or they pulled him as a mascot.
So okay, so to bring this back home, because I don't want to just be like me
Fascinating. I didn't
talking.
realize.
To bring this into a question to ask Scott, what is your thought process beyond just the CYA? What is your thought process of what you're representing to the audience when the audience has to be shown so much because this has an impact on readership, right? Because there's like so much audio, especially in comics. Like there's a certain threshold you cross where there's just too much material on the page. It gets cluttered. So how are you thinking about weighing the needs of CYA with aesthetically pleasing the readers with simplicity? Because some of the charm of Popeye is in its visual simplicity. So what are your thoughts on that? And this very unique challenge you've taken that requires that specific approach.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for your questions and your thoughts on these things. I appreciate it. I'll say this. This is aside from me. With Popeye entering the public domain, there are other people out there like me who are doing their own approach with public domain Popeye. There's the video, you can go find it on Amazon. Popeye the Slayer Man he's a serial killer. There's Popeye the Kaiju Killer, and then there's all these other kid Popeye books, and they got Popeye on the cover. They don't have a registered trademark or a trademark TM on there, but they're using Popeye on the cover. Part of my CYA, I mean, I wanted to call this a Popeye or this that, but I was afraid, since I'm doing this so closely to the original content, as an homage, that I wanted to cover my ass, and I've decided it's probably my best interest I don't splash Popeye as a logo on this.
Right.
And I did think about some different. Well, what could I name this? And I can't call it Thimble Theater or I mean, I've got a variation. I don't want to say it, but I have an idea of something I was going to use. And I had another idea, like I was going to originally call it Eye of the Hurricane, was going to be the title of the series. And then one day, I was thinking about the very first story, the episode 1, where he's in his little rowboat, and he's singing his little sea shanty, and it just hit me. I'm just going to, and I love, the old, like, talk about DC, they had like More Fun comics and, Funnies, and, other publishers in the 30s had Funnies as a name, or seeing in the funny pages. So I just, what, I'm settled and I'm very happy. I've trademarked, Sea Shanty Funny. So I feel that I have that as a property, as an identity, and it does separate me from the official real deal stuff. But I can use Popeye. I can use Olive Oil's name, in the stories and all that. I know there's some people that are public domain, experts that say you can't, but I disagree, and you can. So I am using their proper names, and because they are in the public domain. It's like Sherlock Holmes or Conan. I mean, maybe Conan's not the logo and the name is not flashed on the covers, but you open up the book, what's his name? It's Conan.
Right.
And I feel my visuals let you know immediately that this is a Popeye comic. It's an unofficial alternate take, but in the legal stuff, down at the bottom, yes, I'm going to do that on for now, for legal reasons and protection. I feel obligated that I have to have that statement to really seriously to cover my butt. And I also want it down there that I'm trying to read the screen where I wrote, Sea Shanty Funnies uses public domain material and is not affiliated, endorsed, or associated in any way with King Features Syndicate Incorporated, nor any claims. Then I go into their trademark, copyright trademark, or against their trademarks. But I go into the stuff and I do a little bit of other explanation. But yeah, maybe it's overkill. Maybe it does aesthetically detract. But I feel that it's a necessary evil that I have to do just to be clear that I am not officially endorsed by King Features, that I'm doing my own take. So I know it's going to be there for me. I've decided that I need to do that. Now, if I'm doing a story, like I've got a reprint of the first 40 some odd episodes that I did as a fan club issue to give out, and I've got the stuff with the indicia has the copyright and trademark notices, but when I get into the stories, I don't have it on every page, so it's taken away from there. But
Gotcha.
It's just a little.
No, I understand, and there's a part of that. Like I said, I think there is an aspect of like I said, of critique in it, one sense, but I also think that there's something that I find very interesting, because this is because of the type of project you have decided to undertake, there's a fascinating aspect to this is what you have. These are the waters you have to navigate. And I want to add to what I'm sure you've heard before. Sea Shanty Funnies is a fantastic, much better than I've ever heard of the Cane. So you definitely you picked the right title.
Yeah, Sea Shanty Funnies is a great title.
Yeah, that's a great title.
I'm like cackling over you. You just keep using nautical puns. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
Yeah, there's a couple in there. Navigating the waters. No, I did that on purpose. But that's what's interesting. And I skimmed, or at least I tried to skim. There was an article some years ago that was talking about the fact that we are in uncharted waters with the line between copyright and trademark that's coming up that will face some of these very big properties like Superman and Marvel properties like Spider-Man. And I think we're one big landmark case away of redefining the landscape here. But until that time happens, I completely understand why people are doing what they're doing. Because back in the 80s and 90s, like Jim Shooter was put out of business with spurious lawsuits. So lawsuits that were purposefully, I think, lost almost because they knew that they didn't have a case, but he still went bankrupt trying to defend himself. Yeah. So these are real problems that can happen, and Popeye's Chicken can show up and know that they don't have a case and still come after somebody and put them out of business for no good reason.
I think one of the things that's in the favor of the unofficial Popeye creators, because there's been so many people that have done it, and King hasn't made a peep. And
if they haven't defended it, that does hurt their case. Yeah,
I think that like the thing is they haven't touched it, and I think part of their reason is like I honestly feel like King is just hanging on to a dying business model, and I think that they know.
Yeah, they are.
Right? and I talked earlier before you got here. I don't know if you heard me. I was complaining about how like they're not putting anything out. They're not building a new market. They're just coasting. And
if I may, Cartoonicus and I noticed this, that if you look at your local Sunday Funnies page, what started happening is that you remember this, Cartoonicus, when I pointed this out?
Yes.
Where I said that what was happening is that they weren't replacing the strips. They were just making them larger. They were basically just hitting the strips were just taking up more landscape on the page. So the pages were getting so sparse.
Well, and that's especially sad because small market newspapers are getting smaller too. I don't just mean page count. I mean the actual size of the page is shrinking.
Yeah.
And so they're making their comics larger on a smaller paper
because they have fewer to put on them. Yeah, it's wild. But
so I thought you were going to talk about how many of these strips are being passed on, from generation to generation who may not actually care about it, and they're just taking old strips you've probably never read and redrawing them.
Well, I know that I've got I haven't had a subscription to a newspaper, physical paper, in a decade. I do subscribe locally to my online newspaper, and for King Features, they have, and I'm giving them a plug, comicskingdom.com. I think I pay $2.99 a month, and I have access. And They don't have the complete archive of the old material, but there's a lot of the Seagar stuff, some of the Sackendorf, not all of the Sackendorf, and nothing was Zaboli, which is a shame and a tragedy. And they have some of the High Eisman, nothing with Bobby London. But the new creative team, they have a Thursday comic that's more olive oil centered, and then they have their Sunday comic that Randy does. And I as a reader, I like having access to the archives, and I do keep up and I read what's going on with the new stuff. But that's they don't do dailies any longer like they used to, and that's what a lot of us grew up on. I guess it's just part of the model of what today's society is like. I don't want to critique anyone, but I do keep up, and I do enjoy what they're doing. And I don't know, I'm rambling again, but
yeah,
I do know. Go ahead.
I was going to say our mutual friend Chuck Dixon kind of went through this with the Conan books. What we were just talking about, that you can't put Conan in big letters on there. They did kind of put Chuck Dixon's Conan underneath in tiny letters.
Yeah.
And
That's threading that needle real fine.
right. And
Well, and then he did get a cease and desist.
yeah. Let me
Which
finish
is
my
like-
sentence, and I would
like I said,
cover
that's
that. You
the
know,
thing
you
that's
don't
so
have to
frustrating.
interrupt me to say what I'm going to be talking
realize
about.
that.
Go ahead, Hutch.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that they did come after him, even though, like you said, they should be okay to do that. The book publisher that he was working with should have been okay to do that, but it's like, who wants to go to court and possibly lose? But for the most part, you should win because it is public domain. But you know, if they decide to make an issue of it, you know, that's the real issue with all these. You know, when the first person who tries to do a Superman comic book, they will probably go after them. Even, you know, they'll find some way. You know, it is trademarked, and you know, and hit them hard. But you know, that's what we it's all up in the air until Superman goes public, basically.
Yeah.
Because somebody is going to have to take that on. But you know, well, I would say Warner Brothers has deep pockets, but of course all these big companies are now in the red, so I don't know. I don't know what
There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money that people will see
Yeah, they
in
still
that
got
property.
cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone will spend money.
Yeah.
I did have a follow-up question for Scott. And this is another observation of, again, the challenge that you're approaching here, and it's just the passage of time. Which is the fact that I have some familiarity with some of the comic characters that are being referenced. Not all. Like I got the Fleischer reference to the mechanical monsters from the Superman. Like that was a great deep cut. But there are, like I said, my newspaper did not carry a lot of older, like the super old stuff, even the reprint stuff. So like I got Calvin and Hobbes from back when that was a thing. But again. Yeah. Calvin and Hobbes survives a little bit through reprint, but in a couple generations, he'll be, you know, his cultural imprint will basically be gone. And so that's happened to so many strips. I think it was Little Abner used to be a household name. No one knows who that is anymore. And it's just lamentable, but it's also the passage of time. So my question for you has to do with the fact that your comic and the way you're approaching it is almost like, you know, a continuation of people who grew up with these characters and these stories, and you know, it's that cozy little, hey, if I stopped reading this 20 or 30 years ago, it's almost like I just pick it right back up, and I know all the cast members, even if they weren't in Thimble Theater, they were next door neighbors. Blondie was next door neighbor to these comics, and so it's actually very natural in a way to kind of see them be in the strip as well, because on the page itself you were seeing them next to each other. Mm-hmm. So my question though is the fact that, is your comic, or what is your thought about your audience moving forward? Because you know, there are, you know, Cartoonicus had mentioned that there were certain things that he missed. I missed some stuff, obviously, and so when it comes to getting people who don't know all of those cuts to suddenly just see Palooka Joe, and it's like, I see this guy's name's Joe, and I saw you drew his art style differently, so I knew that's someone who's not from Popeye, he's from something. Yeah. But getting the clues together was more difficult until you guys who are more familiar with Palooka Joe, who've obviously got more familiarity with that because you're old. I'm kidding, but not really. No, but no, it's true.
I'm old, but I'm not that old.
So my point though is that, is there something? What are your thoughts about throwing, either tying things back, pulling the people who are newer, so that we can know these people that you guys already know. Yeah. Is that something on your radar, or what are your thoughts on that?
Great question. And I'm sorry, sometimes I stutter, and I gather my thoughts, so I apologize. This is what I want to try to say. I am writing this way that I think about some of my friends who've never read a Popeye comic strip in their life and have never seen a cartoon, or brand new, or newbies to it. But I'm also writing to people that know the insides and outs and are scholars and can be, write articles for newsletters and books and fanzines about it. So I'm dealing with the uninitiated and the expert. I've got both.
Mhm.
So that is in my mind. And this kind of goes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier. That every now and then I got to introduce an editor note to try to give a clue or a point. I try to let the story naturally explains. Like, you may have not have known who Joe Palooka was. And it's kind of funny you mentioned about stuff like Lil Abner. But Joe Palooka back in the day, I think, was it Jennifer, he had like 7 or 8 films.
Yeah.
He was like the #2 comic strip with like subscription of 6 million people reading it back in the 40s.
Yeah,
Those
Joe
people-
Palooka is one of the most successful sports comics in the West.
But yet today, probably 99% of the people have no idea who he is.
Right.
Why, Scott, am I using Joe Palooka? Well, he entered the public domain. I've loved the character. He's a boxer, and so was Popeye. So, like, for example, I want in the same thing with Blondie and Dagwood. You know, I want to be able to bring in some of these other public domain characters and have them interact, just because I want to play with the toys and have fun. And so I keep in mind that there are the hardcore, you know, Uber fans, and there's also the people that have no idea. So I'm hoping the stories themselves will naturally explain who and what's going on. And I try to keep it simple, keep it basic, but sometimes and I consider myself a fanboy of a lot of different stuff in comics and pop culture. You know, sometimes I am guilty of over explaining. I may do that in a note or a side note. So it is a challenge for me to keep that balance. And I
Verbose.
would you say?
You're verbose.
I am verbose. Yes. Yes.
You know, you wonder, you know, if you were to bring in like the Cats and Jammer Kids or any of these other public domain things, the problem is that it's only entertaining to the people who kind of know who they are, and even for us, that was a very old reference. You know,
Well,
Right.
again, I'm not trying to compare and contrast myself with Randy Mulholland, who's doing the current official Popeye, but he has one of the Cats and Jammer characters in his current storyline, for example. You know, I won't be, just FYI, but
sure.
you know, he is, and all power to him.
I just picked one at
It's
random.
fun.
I'm just
Well, yeah, it is. It is the crazy, you know, the randomness and craziness of it.
yeah.
I think it's good, actually. I mean, I wasn't sorry. Just to make sure that I clarify my point here. I'm not criticizing using these characters. I think it's great. I think because without people using them, they will fade even further from consciousness. So like, because I think Buster Brown, again, another used to be household name,
Right.
and again, no one knows who that is. So it's just like, so without bringing, that's one of the reasons why the superheroes have stayed alive so long and so well with DC and Marvel is they've had 2 companies just keeping them alive. So I'm very happy to see that, you know, people would want to go into that public domain toy box. It's just, it just introduces these, I guess it also gives you, it gives our audience another thing to appreciate with the challenge you've undertaken, because you're undertaking a challenge, threading those needles and navigating those treacherous waters with IP, and which can be dangerous. And then on top of that, you're also navigating the fact that you're dealing with a host of basically unknown characters that you need to then balance between the people who actually do know them, and the people who do know them will have almost encyclopedic knowledge, and then the uninitiated. So that's actually, you're playing on hard mode, is I guess what I'm saying. So props to you.
Well, thank you. And I'm also bringing in characters that are original characters that I'm creating, you know, out of my head from scratch too, and injecting them like they're, you know, they could have been around for, you know, for years, but you know, they're new characters. I got my wife Jennifer's right here. We got a new kind of a support character named Caledonia that we kind of created together, and I'm writing into the storyline. And but I've got another character coming up. I don't want to spoil it. Brand new original character, and he's going to be introduced. And but he's going to be an
You
old.
mean other than the Hamburglar Meister?
Well, just don't talk about trademark and copyright. I was playing loosey goosey with the parody there for sure. But
That was.
I've noticed that you added an additional stamp in addition to the text at the bottom. When it was like really like, you know, blatant, you'd put a stamp on it that said, "This is parody, protected speech."
I had to.
So like it was, it was so. That's what I'm saying. It's very clear you're navigating some very treacherous situations.
Good observation. Especially where there's characters that are there are characters that are in a gray area, whether or not they're in the public domain or not. And so I try to use those a bit more parody to bring them in.
Can I interject one
My
thing?
wife wants to say something. Jennifer,
I feel like with all of this,
speak up.
I feel like with all of this public domain stuff and things, that's why it's good to introduce new characters and to like and to like have some of the townspeople that are brand new characters, like
The Umpire.
The Umpire,
Yeah.
and Caledonia and other things that you create new characters so that you have the old characters that have always been in Popeye's universe, but you're introducing new ones so that you grow that character base instead of always having the same people interacting with each other all the time.
Well, there's new people, and it's like life. You know, you may meet somebody tomorrow that's going to be one of those kind of people that's going to be in your life and make a positive or even negative, but you know, it's going to impact your life. So I kind of like bringing in and out original characters, but I also love bringing in obscure characters if I can. Like I've done the Sherlock Holmes knockoff, Ham Hock Bones. That was an actual character that was used just briefly, and it was nice to be able to bring back this detective character in the current storyline. Again, I'm rambling.
No, thank you very much.
Well, that's fine. Well, and actually, it's one of the things too is like back to the use of original characters. One thing I wanted to point out is like when you first introduced Caledonia, right? I was just like, it feels like a character I've read before. So I went looking through the internet to see if I could find where you pulled it from.
When I first saw her, I was
probably
wondering
to figure out that it was a new character.
when I first saw her, I was thinking it was supposed to be like a pop-eyed version of Mary Worth or something.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. Well, again, her name is taken from a Louis Jordan song, Caledonia, came out in the early 40s. I'm sorry. But she's a character that's near and dear to our hearts that we love. And this lady right here behind me is a big part of that inspiration and cooperation to help create that character.
Hopefully there'll be more stories.
She wants more stories with the character, yeah. And I do realize, in all seriousness, she's going to be integrated in the storyline, but she's not going to be one of the main players to borrow from the Thimble Theater. I mean, there's main players and there's support players and there's guest, cameo players. So I've got kind of at least three tiers of, how I look at the character.
Well, I guess to kind of wrap stuff up.
Okay.
One of the things interesting from the chat, and we don't have to wrap things up here, but I think this is a really neat place to put a bow on it if you feel like it. Is that one of the things in the chat's people talking about that shifting of pop culture, and Popeye was a landmark of the post World War II monoculture for 60 years, and that's remarkable. That's a remarkable thing. But one of the things I think that your comic does is I think that in a way that some others don't, is I think it preserves the kinds of story that Segar was telling in a way that makes them accessible to people that might not have read any of those Segar stories to begin with.
Oh, wow.
And I think that is remarkable, if nothing else.
Well, thank you very much. I sometimes get so isolated in my own head about things, as I toss back things and forth. I sometimes it's hard for me to pull away and see the bigger picture of things. So I appreciate all the feedback that everyone's been giving me. Whether it's, I appreciate it. So thank you very much, everyone. But if you're reading it, if you're enjoying it, if it gives a reaction out of you, if hopefully it's a smile or a chuckle, then I feel like I've done my job of. I'm doing this out of the love. I'm not doing this for any paycheck. I'm doing this out of the love as a comic fan myself, and this is also scratching a creative itch that I've had since I was in third grade to I always wanted to one day write and draw Popeye comics, and with Popeye entering the public domain, and this is my opportunity.
Yep. And I really also I do want to applaud the fact that you are going for it and using this character that, like, I mean, they're still making Popeye comics. Got to give King that.
Yep.
But he's still a character that had so much public access, and it really has not been used in at least 2 decades.
It really is hard to believe there has not been another Popeye movie.
There
another
was an
attempt to make
animated
one.
one that was supposed to happen. And
There have been some false starts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gendy Tartakovsky was in charge of one that got scrapped.
Yeah.
And
We got a teaser trailer and everything for it.
yeah, well, they actually released an animatic, but
What is it about Tartakovsky? He just can't get any respect. Like he made that Clone Wars, and they don't even let you watch the Clone Wars that he made anymore.
I love that Clone Wars stuff.
I do too. It actually works as a movie that fits in between the second and third movies.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
Saj Ventress was introduced there. I love that storyline with the Saj fighting in on Yavin. Moon
for
Yavin.
sure. And it was it. And well, the reason that doesn't get respect is that Lucas wanted to go back and redo it,
Yeah.
so that he could say he was the power behind it.
Yeah.
He doesn't like it when other people get plaudits for things that he, that aren't him.
I tell you, I'm just going to say one more thing about the original George. How do you say his last name? How do you say his last name?
Tartakovsky, I think.
Okay.
Tartakovsky.
When that scene came out with Obi-Wan Kenobi in a stormtrooper or clone armor with his cape and those IG-88 Lancer droids on speeder bikes, like a jousting with lances, that was that blew my mind. I love it. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fight with
Gendy's
Ventress. The fight with Ventress that takes place in the rain with the rain hitting the lightsabers was just so artistically done.
Well,
It's like,
beautiful.
why didn't they ever think of doing that before? That is so cool. Yeah.
And I hope
I own the DVDs, by the way.
I do too.
They're good.
You too.
Yeah, as do I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to.
So, well, anyway, if we've been at this for 2 hours now. So probably
Now we talk about the movie.
Talk about the movie. Okay.
That would go for another hour.
Well,
That would at least for another hour.
If we do
Well-
do a Popeye the movie with Robin Williams, I
Yeah.
really hope we can invite Ryan Maxwell, who's an
Yeah,
expert.
we will have to invite Ryan.
Written articles and done presentations on the
Well,
film.
and he
He's
mentioned that he's interviewed most of the
Yeah.
primaries. So
Yeah.
I definitely want to have that. So we'll have to have a Popeye follow up in like a month or so,
Okay.
and have Ryan on to talk about the film. And I love the film. I actually listened to the soundtrack, not infrequently. Not all of it because some of it's real bad, but a lot of it I really like.
Sing most of the
I love that that album.
Harry Nielsen, man, kind of a degenerate.
I'm-
Anyway,
all right.
but that's a whole other topic. We can't talk about it. We can't do it
Yeah,
tonight.
let's not
We gotta
start
move
talking
on.
about it.
But I will say this: one of my favorite bass players and artists, Klaus Vormann, who illustrated the cover for the Beatles' Revolver. He played bass with the Plastic Ono band and some stuff with Ringo and George.
Okay.
And he also starred as one of the ruffians in the Popeye movie. Played bass on that Popeye soundtrack, so he's like one of my heroes.
Wow.
A German, one of the Beatles pals from Germany. Before Beatlemania really hit. Anyway, I'm rambling.
Tankatron says, "Sorry, I'm late. Dang it, I missed something I was interested in." Well, the replay is always there, my friend.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts on Sea Shanty Funnies before we call it a night. Cartoonicus, you haven't said anything in a while. What are your final thoughts?
Well, blow me down.
Twitless.
No, just thank you very much, Scott, for sharing this with us and for sharing your time.
I appreciate all the wonderful questions and thoughts into it. Well, thank you. I enjoyed this very much. I appreciate the invite to be able to talk
Of
about
course, man. Absolutely.
And
And Hutch, you get the last word.
Oh, I just want to say I'm sorry if most of my discussion with you was about, taking on a public domain character, but if you haven't watched our show much, it is something we talk about a lot because I've said before, when Wonder Woman falls into public domain, I want to write Wonder Woman. Everybody else wants to take on Superman and Batman. I think that's going to be a nightmare, but by then they'll know what to do with public domain characters by, 3 years into it. They'll either care or they won't,
Well, another thing too, I really didn't get to say this, but I'm sorry, we're wrapping up, but
No.
But I'm not a major publisher or a small. I'm doing this out of love. I'm doing this as a web comic. Yes, I do. I have self-published, printed my own. I'm collecting the stories, but that's low key. I printed 100 books. I'm not, I do keep track of numbers, and I'm excited, and I'm bragging, and for me it blows my mind. But I'm on the Facebook group. I do have a Sea Shanty Funnies Facebook group that if you're on Facebook, I invite you to join. We're approaching 200 people that are reading, and then on my personal website and blog, this is what kind of blows my mind. I'm getting close to 2,000 people a day that are checking out the comic strip. But
That's
yet
awesome.
on my blog and the sites, I got the spot to comment. I've never once received a single comment, but I know the majority of the readership is actually outside of Facebook, which is kind of crazy to think. So I appreciate all the readers. I'm hoping it makes me feel good that people are reading it, and the feedback that I'm enjoying it. And I appreciate the critiques, even if there's some constructive criticism. It does make me think, and I appreciate it. So
I didn't think, did we critique? I thought it was all positive.
I
had a little bit. I had a little bit. I had a little constructive. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So no,
and I will say this up front. Twitless is excellent at constructive criticism.
Well, I appreciate it. I was an art professor for 20 years at a college, and I had to moderate critiques all the time. So I got a pretty thick skin and understand the ropes that I know how to navigate those waters. How about that?
Yeah, there we go. Oh, yeah. Perfect.
That's a good way to end.
That is a great way to end.
All right,
everybody. Next week on the show, we are going to be talking about the Eisners, and we're going to be reading and discussing the category for the best single issue, I think is what we agreed on last week, for the upcoming 26 Eisners, because your boy is a voting member of the organization. So I'm doing my homework for my show.
All right.
That's the story. So until next time, this is Reese for the whole gang up here on the satellite. We are signing off. Get out there and read some funny Popeye comics. You guys have a good night.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Toot toot.